Hello. Back in September 2019, I was asked to speak to the Cyberfest conference in the Northeast around the challenges of separating fact from fiction and the opportunity in presenting fact through fiction. We were looking particularly at making cybersecurity learning accessible because I've written a number of books around fictional cybercrime scenarios in the near future, the Sim Cavalier series. But this is the full lecture that I gave at Cyberfest, and I thought it might be interesting. So I started off by telling people what I do. I'm a woman with many hats. For the last decade, my work's involved digital strategies. That is to say, I look at the challenges of business through the lens of a 30-year career and a professional grounding in chartered management accountancy. I then help clients to determine the best use of emerging technologies and existing technologies to provide a solution to the business challenges that they're facing. I write a lot. Alongside the science fiction exploits, at the time I was literally in the final stages of writing my new book, which came out in March 2020, the Blockchain Hurricane, the origins, applications and future of blockchain and cryptocurrency. I work with clients consulting from startups through to blue chip multinationals, pushing the boundaries of where emerging tech can be applied. And I occasionally lecture at Teesside Business School as well. When I need an escape from all of that, and from being a mum to my 2 secondary school children, I do karate, and I'm an inveterate nerd. So I was asked to come and talk to the group about sci-fi work, but I want people watching this to think about what are the earliest things that you learned from reading fiction. These are some of my earliest memories. So aged 6, I discovered that scientists could accelerate atomic particles in a cyclotron. For what purpose, I had no idea, thanks to the Target novelisation of Doctor Who and the Cave Monsters, which I was caught reading under the desk. Aged 11, my history teacher was really impressed by my knowledge of the panoply of the Egyptian gods, gleaned entirely from Doctor Who and the Pyramids of Mars. There's a bit of a theme here. My love of history flourished thanks to more conventional historical novels ranging from The Wool Pack, which gave me the intricacies of the Cotswolds medieval wool trade, to Nancy Mitford's The Sun King, the tale of Louis XIV, which was actually on my A-level reading list for history. I learned snippets of Morse code from A Tale of Space Hostages. I still watch the movements of the ailerons on the aircraft wing after a passing fascination with the Jungle Run flying adventures when I was a teenager. And of course, along the way, I've had to employ a certain amount of critical thinking. There's no dinosaurs in caves under the Peak District, and I'm unlikely to be kidnapped by top-secret spacecraft any time soon, more's the pity. To be fair, though, whenever I sweep the floor, unbidden into my head, comes the voice of Ma Ingalls. Draw the broom, Laura. Don't flip it. That raises the dust. Some of the most useful advice I've ever had. But the presentation of facts in fiction, for me, makes them come to life. So how did I end up working on the presentation of facts in fiction? Well, the story begins in early 2016 when I met an IT and cybersecurity practitioner with a message to communicate. He had a title for a book in mind. Don't panic, it's too late for that. I liked it. He had the knowledge and I could write. It seemed like a good idea at the time. About 3 lunches and 4 coffees in, though, he suggested that the book should be fiction. Don't be silly, I said. I can't write fiction. For the next 8 months, he continued to nudge, and I resisted. Then one day, an idea hit me. I wrote 300 words. A single short scene of waking up to news of a cyber attack. Keep writing, said my friend. And I did. And the rest is history. Since then, the tales of Cameron and Ross and their team have taken on a life of their own in 2 novels, a 3rd on the way, a short story, others on the way, and the rich seam of cybercrime that I'm tapping means I have a few more ideas on the drawing board. The plots come straight from my fevered imagination. The process of creating complex fiction has come as a delightful surprise, and sometimes I wish I'd taken the leap long ago, building on my childhood of writing Doctor Who adventures on an old typewriter in my bedroom. At times, my hands run faster than my brain, and I see twists and incidents arriving on the page without passing through my conscious mind. Apparently this isn't unusual. Stephen King says that when he's asked by fans, "Why do you choose to write about such gruesome subjects?" he usually answers this with another question: "Why do you assume that I have a choice?" The somewhat utopian world that my unconscious mind has constructed for the Sim Cavalier is not dissimilar to our own. I push the timeline forward by 30 years. That allows drones to deliver the shopping and autonomous vehicles to whiz around the streets. And I've flooded large swathes of low-lying Britain just for fun. I've extrapolated today's emerging technologies to a point where they reach daily utility, but they come with their own annoyances and vulnerabilities. Characters struggle with misfiring chip implants and faulty smart door locks. Our hero turns to physical, unhackable means of security instead. Drones drop deliveries with all the finesse of a gig economy driver, squashing the morning muffins and spilling goods down the street. Advertising hoardings tailor their message to each passing individual. Creepy invasion of privacy becoming normality. Additive manufacturing, the 3D printing of components, provides the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle for the manned Mars mission, but also opens new cans of cybersecurity worms. At the core of the plots, though, there's generally human error and poor cybersecurity practice. People fail to update their passwords. Stolen login details change hands in shady dark web marketplaces. Faked public Wi-Fi networks trap the unwary. DDoS attacks from botnets take down servers. Ransomware exploits legacy software systems which are no longer supported by the developers, but are clung to like security blankets by organisations who should know better. Apparently impregnable physical locations are breached through social engineering and third-party vulnerabilities. The need to stay on top of an ever-evolving cybercrime landscape keeps our heroes busy and underlines the fact that there's an astonishing volume of malware and exploits circling at any one time like sharks round a stricken lifeboat. By showing the potentially serious outcomes of innocent mistakes and inattention, my friend and I hoped to disabuse readers of the old trope of "I'm not important, no one would hack me." And the message seems to be getting through. One Amazon reviewer observed that there are some great tips on how to minimise your cyber risk and how you really should check before clicking on those hyperlinks. Take note. So it is fun to create stuff, but I also believe that authors of fiction have a duty of care to get the basic facts right. For this reason, every page I write is scrutinised by my cybersecurity mentor to ensure that there aren't any shortcuts around the technology, that my imagination hasn't run too far off course, and that the underlying message is correct. Research shows, though, that people learn and retain facts easily from stories, including facts which are misrepresented or untrue. When test subjects in a 2003 study responded to a general knowledge quiz, they used the facts they learned from stories given to them as part of the study, regardless of whether those facts were correct or not. Interestingly, they also regarded some of those facts that they'd learned as prior knowledge, even the incorrect ones. Stories can provide a base layer of understanding in a way which can and does influence behaviour. This study also showed that people with higher cognitive ability were more likely to question facts presented to them, particularly if there were any jarring inconsistencies in the tale, which reduced their trust of the source, but many simply take the facts as read. Sadly, sci-fi was one of the genres picked out by the researchers as potentially unreliable, particularly in the way that science is represented. I hope in a small way I've contributed to the reliable side of the equation. This can be seen quite clearly by comparing two iconic sources of stories in recent years. On one hand, The Martian, cracking film. This started out as a mini-novel self-published on Amazon, but the film and the longer book of the film were produced with the support and input of NASA. As much real science as possible was incorporated and extrapolated to the near-future scenario. There's a lot of fun fact in the book and the film, and I'm all set if I ever get kidnapped by that top-secret spacecraft. On the other hand, we have The Imitation Game, critically acclaimed, finely acted, but it plays fast and loose with the historical facts for dramatic effect. Some commentators have even suggested, rather pithily, that the only unadulterated fact in the whole tale was that Turing's first name was indeed Alan. That's possibly harsh, but basing your knowledge of the fine work at Bletchley Park on the Benedict Cumberbatch performance is to ignore, for instance, the genuine contribution of thousands of women behind the code-breaking efforts. I've been interested just this week to discover that my daughter in Year 9 is studying fact versus fiction through the film and the fact of the sinking of the Titanic. Hopefully the upcoming generation will be faster, will be wiser to the use of dubious stories to influence behaviour. Of course, the most notorious example of this has been Cambridge Analytica's activities, because ultimately the quality of the story, not the quality of the fact, is often what impacts upon us. It's said that a lie can travel round the world faster than the truth can get its boots on, and it's only a passing consolation that the quote is probably not by Mark Twain. I challenged the people at the Cyberfest with a task. Effective cybersecurity relies on the willing engagement of all users, and stories can cut through the noise. If facts of good practice are embedded so they feel to the user like background general knowledge, then half the battle is won. So if you've got a complex thing to communicate, this is my challenge. Tell the stories. Make them resonate. Don't just tell people to do things that they find onerous or inconvenient or irrelevant. Show them why it matters. Overall, keep it simple. Speak the language of the audience and stick to the underlying facts. If you'd like to know more about the fictional world of cybercrime, you here on my Patreon already know all about the Sim Cavalier books and the Harvey Duckman Presents anthologies that are on Amazon. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you've got any questions, send me a message. It'd be great to talk to you. Cheers.